Feudalism. Feudalism is an early economic system based on land ownership and personal obligation. Land is owned by a small elite, usually nobles or monarchs, and worked by peasants who receive protection in exchange for labor and loyalty. Wealth comes from agriculture. Social mobility is extremely limited, and economic power is tied directly to land rather than money. Mercantilism. Mercantilism believes that a nation becomes wealthy and powerful by accumulating as much gold and silver as possible. It focuses on strong state control of trade, high tariffs, export promotion, and limiting imports. Colonies exist mainly to enrich the mother country. This system dominated early modern Europe and treats global trade as a zero-sum game where one nation's gain is another's loss. Capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Its core features are private property, free markets, voluntary exchange, competition, division of labor and capital accumulation. Individuals and businesses make economic decisions based on self-interest, and prices are determined by supply and demand. Innovation, efficiency, and economic growth are its main strengths, while inequality and market failures are its most common criticisms. Laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire. Capitalism is a more extreme form of capitalism that argues the economy works best when the government does almost nothing. The state should not regulate markets, control prices, or interfere with businesses beyond protecting property rights, enforcing contracts, and maintaining national defense. The idea is that the invisible hand of the market will naturally lead to the best outcomes. Socialism. Socialism is an umbrella term for systems that advocate social or collective ownership of the means of production instead of private ownership. Its goal is to reduce inequality and ensure that economic output benefits everyone rather than a small owning class in classical socialism. Workers directly own and manage workplaces in modern socialism. The state often plays a role through regulation, welfare, redistribution, and nationalization of key industries. Market socialism. Market socialism combines socialist ownership with market mechanisms. Businesses may be owned by workers, cooperatives, or the state, but still compete in markets. Prices are influenced by supply and demand rather than central planning. The goal is to keep efficiency and innovation while removing private profit extraction.
Communism. Communism is an economic system centered around common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. Goods are allocated based on need rather than profit. In theory, a communist society has no private property, no social classes, no money, and no state. The state is seen as a temporary tool that disappears once class conflict is eliminated.
Command economy.
A command economy is an economic system where a central authority, usually the state, makes all major economic decisions. It determines what is produced, how much is produced, and how resources are distributed. Prices, wages, and production targets are often set by planners rather than markets. Command economies aim for stability and equality, but often struggle with inefficiency, shortages, and lack of innovation.
Mixed economy.
A mixed economy combines elements of capitalism and socialism. Most modern economies fall into this category. Private businesses exist alongside government regulation, public services, and welfare systems. Markets handle most production, but the state intervenes to correct market failures, reduce inequality, and provide essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure.
Welfare capitalism.
Welfare capitalism is a capitalist system that includes strong social safety nets. The market remains the primary driver of economic activity, but the state redistributes wealth through taxes to fund healthcare, unemployment benefits, pensions, and education. The goal is to soften the negative effects of capitalism without replacing it.
State capitalism.
State capitalism is a system where the state owns or controls major industries, but operates them for profit rather than social welfare. These state-owned enterprises compete in global markets, much like private corporations. The government acts as the main capitalist investor rather than a neutral regulator.
Corporatism.
Corporatism organizes the economy into sectors such as agriculture, industry, or services. Workers, employers, and the state cooperate through formal institutions to negotiate wages, prices, and production. Instead of competition driving the economy, coordination and stability are prioritized. It does not mean rule by corporations, but structured collaboration between economic groups.
Distributism.
Distributism argues that economic power should be widely distributed rather than concentrated in the hands of the state or large corporations. It supports private property, small businesses, cooperatives, and family-owned enterprises. It rejects both capitalism and socialism, believing both lead to excessive concentration of power.
Mutualism.
Mutualism is an economic system associated with anarchist thought. It supports private possession based on use rather than ownership for profit. Workers own their tools in workplaces and exchange goods through mutual credit systems. Markets exist, but without capitalist exploitation. Interest, rent, and profit are viewed as unjust.
Gift economy.
A gift economy is based on giving goods and services without an explicit agreement for immediate or future rewards. Value is created through social relationships, trust, and reciprocity, rather than prices. Gift economies are common in small communities and early human societies.
Subsistence economy.
A subsistence economy is one where people produce just enough to survive, rather than to sell or accumulate wealth. Most production is for personal or local consumption. Trade is minimal, and technology is usually simple. This system prioritizes survival over growth.
Sharing economy.
The sharing economy is a modern system enabled by technology, where individuals share access to goods and services, often through digital platforms. Instead of owning assets, people rent or share them, such as cars, homes, or tools. Critics argue it often becomes platform capitalism rather than true sharing. Platform capitalism. Platform capitalism is an economic model where digital platforms act as intermediaries, connecting users, workers, and consumers. These platforms profit by controlling data, algorithms, and access rather than producing goods themselves. It creates convenience and efficiency, but also raises concerns about worker rights, monopolies, and surveillance.
Green economy.
The green economy focuses on sustainable development, environmental protection, and long-term ecological balance. Economic growth is reshaped to reduce carbon emissions, pollution, and resource depletion. Profitability is balanced with environmental responsibility.
Post-scarcity economy.
A post-scarcity economy is a theoretical system where technological advancement makes most goods abundant and cheap. Automation, artificial intelligence, and advanced energy sources eliminate material scarcity, shifting the economy away from labor, money, and traditional markets.
Traditional economy.
A traditional economy is based on customs, beliefs, and historical practices. Economic roles are often inherited, and change is slow. Production methods and distribution are guided by tradition rather than profit or policy.